Huh?
Cool.
What?
I couldn't hear you because
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to my internet friends.
Well,
Welcome back to Delinquent Speed Shop, internet friends. Today I'm going to be working on this super sweet 1967 Camaro SS. This first-gen Camaro is absolutely beautiful inside and out, except for the trunk where J-Rod, our Coffee City auto detail expert, found some unfortunate rust spots. So the owner wants us to track down the leak, then do a rust removal and preventative treatment for the entire trunk area. And a little unfortunate spoiler, what we thought was hopefully a somewhat trivial issue might actually be way worse than we originally expected. Not something you ever want to tell a client, but it is definitely something they need to know. All right, let's get the show on the road. First things first, we need to track down where the water is coming from so we can keep that from happening anymore. And I'm gonna do that by pouring water directly into the rain channels around the entire trunk and window area. You can use a garden hose to test for leaks, but in my experience, these little Lucas caps fit perfectly on a water bottle. This just gives me a little bit more control and prevents a huge mess on the shop floor. We've got our water poured, so now we're just gonna sit back and watch inside the trunk to see where the drips come from. Oh, there it is. So you see how it's dripping water down here? The seal here isn't actually retaining it. It's actually here. Those are holes. I thought it was dripping down here, but look underneath.
yep, that's it. That fucking blows.
Yeah.
That uber blows.
Listen, I know we're dramatic, but if you don't understand why this actually does blow, it's because a leak in this area means probably one of two things. Either the seam wasn't welded correctly and it was super porous and never corrected, or there was no seam sealer used, or possibly both. After looking around at the fenders, we realized that one of them isn't original to the car, which means this was repaired at some point, and that means we need to check every seam carefully, especially around where it looks like it's been repaired. That feels softer than it should. I feel like that might be water underneath this paint, unfortunately. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want that coming through. I don't think these are sealed very well. Yeah.
Yep, right there.
Yeah. Like we were afraid of, the seam on the passenger side looks like it wasn't sealed correctly either, and unfortunately for this one, there appears to be water slowly pooling underneath the paint. This is the last thing we wanted to find. No, actually, that was the last thing we wanted to find, but whenever I was looking around and making sure we had caught everything, I noticed that there was a lot of water buildup around the taillights, and so we realized that the taillight seals were not sealing water in. So we had several places to address. Step one is stripping off all of the paint and everything else in the trunk because it's obvious someone has painted over some in the past, and I'm a little nervous of what I'm gonna find. We're getting ready to remove this rust. First, we're gonna protect just the car edges and everything, but yeah, then we're gonna scrub this stuff off and start some treatment. All right, this is what we're using, hard surface cleaner. We're gonna do half a cup to 2 gallons. Did I say half a cup? 8 quarts. Can't do it while they're talking. Dyslexia and ADD make that impossible. 8 quarts, half a cup, 1/16 per. Is that right? No, 132, 132nd. All right, so we mix approximately some of the powder in here.
So,
Yes, that's a scientific measurement.
your scientific measurement.
Face is a scientific measurement.
What?
So your face is a scientific measurement. So yeah, we're gonna take this, our very fancy cleaner, and we're gonna go and scrub some rust, and we're gonna use these little sanding pads that I got off Amazon for super cheap. But they're awesome. They're so good. They take off so much and they last. You can just reuse them. They're comfortable in your hands. Promoting these. But these don't have a brand, so if somebody makes them and they want me to promote them for you, let me know. To strip the paint out of the truck, I wanted to start as gentle as possible so I didn't damage any metal. However, I soon realized that unless I wanted to be sanding for the next 27 years, this job required a bit more muscle. If you're planning on doing this to your own vehicle, be sure and inspect what you need to take off before choosing your tool of choice, because while I did end up using the grinder and a used flap disc, it's only because the more gentle options weren't cutting it, literally. But again, try your best not to damage any metal, especially on classics like this one. If you see a lot of sparks, that means it's probably too aggressive for what we're doing here. Now that I've got the majority of the paint and surface rust off, it's time to take out the drain plugs, which appear to have been completely glued down with seam sealer. Yay! This is not one of my favorite places to look right now, just judging by actual plug. As the name implies, these drain plugs are for, well, draining. And naturally, if you plug up your drain, you have just turned your trunk into a water basin. So unless you want to make another carpool DeVille, I'd make sure your plugs aren't sealed all the way around. So we're about to take this one up. So this is not factory, and I know that because we went over this one. And, well, there's a couple screwdriver holes here where someone got a little frisky. So sorry, sometimes you just need to bitch a little. It's an important part of the repair process. All right, now that I've got everything I need removed from the trunk, I'm gonna paint on a couple coats of this rust neutralizer to make sure we get into every nook and cranny, especially around the taillight area. This needs to set up for 24 hours before we put our top coat on, so I'll be calling it a day and I will see y'all mañana. All right, welcome back. You can see that our rust neutralizer has completely cured. It is not tacky at all. I am gonna sand this a little bit. There is just a little bit of texture, and so I'm gonna sand it and then clean it before we get everything ready to put our top coat on. Now that I've got any texture knocked down from the rust treatment, I've masked off where it was needed, and now we're ready for our top coat. I'm using the Pour 15 Rust Preventative top coat, and I'm gonna be putting on 2 coats by hand to make sure the mess is minimal and the paint is evenly distributed in all places. So this paint is thicker than your normal top coat, and it runs like crazy because it doesn't dry very quick. So I'm gonna do 2 lightish coats instead of 1 heavy layer. I did try the roller for this, but honestly, I prefer the little brush because I can get into all the little grooves evenly. We have got the first layer of our top coat on, and it is going on really nicely. We've got to let this dry for a little bit before we can put on our second coat, and while that's happening, I'm going to get the drain plugs and clean them up with the wire wheel and then put some paint on them as well. And through the magic of television, our second coat has been applied and is ready to start curing. We're gonna let this set and cure for a good while we tackle the original problem, the leaks. It's important to note the owner of this car wants us to do a semi-temporary repair on these leaks to buy a little time before they make any bigger decisions. Because if they wanted a forever fix on this issue, we would be removing all of this paint and fixing both seams at the metal and repairing anything else we might find hiding underneath. So if you do this to your own vehicle, just know the seams will need to be repaired at some point. This just gives you some time to minimize any further damage. I've got the top area masked off so we don't get epoxy where it isn't needed, and for the bottom I'm using marine grade epoxy clay to mold into a plug. We probably could have just done the top epoxy, but the more preventative measures you do for classics, the more years they'll be on the road, and that's always our goal. For the top of the seam, I'm using a clear epoxy, and I'm gonna be pushing this into the little holes using a needle. The goal is to get as much epoxy into the holes as possible without getting it everywhere else. It's a delicate process, but if you don't make sure these are sealed completely from the very top, all we would be doing is creating a place for water to. Once our epoxy is on, we're gonna let that cure, and we're gonna move on to the last source of the leaks, the taillight gaskets. After taking the taillights off, I confirmed a suspicion I had the night before when looking for replacement gaskets. We're going to time travel a bit, and I want to show you the difference in two aftermarket designs and why this one is not one I would recommend. This is the gasket that we ordered, and this is more like the original design. So you're going to see these grooves, and then this is the aftermarket that they had on there. But I want to show you all the difference and what a difference this makes. Here's the old one. And you can see this gasket is just, it kind of just sits there. It doesn't really go into anything. These studs are not, I mean, it just doesn't fit well. It doesn't fit well at all. And there's obviously gaps just everywhere. So this, I have one of the ones that we ordered, and it's got these grooves, so these studs have somewhere to go. But look, and I didn't push it down in there. It just naturally just sat right in there. I ordered these from Eckler's. They came in a couple days, and so I'm gonna get the Camaro, and we are going to put these back in, and these are gonna fit so much better. I'm really happy with these. Before I get ahead of myself, I need to put the drain plugs back in since the top coat is completely cured now. I'm using the Pour 15 seam sealer, and I'm gonna be very careful to leave the drain channels open so the drain plugs can actually do their job now. I'm also going to put a little patch over this homemade hole that we found underneath the drain plug on the driver's side, just so we can make sure everything is sealed tight. For the patch, I'm going to be using the same marine grade epoxy putty that I used for the trunk area. Since it's a white putty, obviously I'm going to have to paint over that, and I'm going to use the same top coat that we used on the trunk. We have got our plugs sealed in. We have got our taillights back in, and these gaskets fit so much better. They really just went on really good. I put some RTV just in the corners to keep them in place, but you can see they fit very well, and you can actually see them, which is awesome. So last thing we have to do is a leak test. Oh, look, it's diverting it. It's diverting it. And it's not dripping. And I love the fuck out of that. So we've got it not coming in on the taillights anymore. The seals are doing great. Let's go ahead and test this side. We didn't see a leak here originally. We just want to make sure. I do believe we are free of leaks. I'm gonna go ahead and go around the taillights just so we can make sure we are good there. We are good there. Let's go around this one. Obviously, rain's not gonna be coming in like this little nozzle, but it's a good test. And we are free of water. Praise the Lord. Well, we are leak-free and good to send this beautiful piece of machinery back to its owner, hopefully giving it the opportunity to spend many more years burning the tires off and terrorizing quiet neighborhoods everywhere. If you liked this video, and well, even if you didn't, hey, be sure to give us a thumbs up. And to see more classic restoration projects, including our huge Restomod rollback project going on right now, make sure to follow our channel at Delinquent Speed Shop. See you soon!